no way. There's no way these parcels can be dealt with without major efforts to correct the Planning Act in a different manner, which would be a major effort because most of the people, all the people involved have died. So there's no way each parcel can be dealt with by itself at the present time. And it would be impossible at any time to deal with one parcel separately without a severance. It can't be done. So for the Planning Act, it's really all one parcel, any way you slice it.
May I add further to that, Henry?
By all means.
And just again with that original Registry Act system. So both of those systems are valid, and the issue is that the registry system, when Agnes wanted to do the first transfer, because she owned that other parcel that was originally registered in a separate system, the first registration, although it was registered legally, it didn't have the effect of the result required, as she did want to transfer all of those parcels. So 4 days later is when she, did the second registration. But ultimately, because the two systems are different and have different requirements, they didn't speak to each other, or it's not valid. So right now it is irregular to have a property with multiple PINs. Properties really should be, there are some unique circumstances, but they should be under one PIN. That's really something that the land registry will identify a property under, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything for my world necessarily, more than it does for the registry system organization. And so when dealing with this parcel selling or anything like that, I don't know the exact plans of the property, but this will consolidate the PINs and make any kind of transfer in the future a lot more smooth. I think that's the whole intent here. If there's anything further you'd like to add, Henry or Lisa, feel welcome to.
I have nothing to add. I think Lisa can't be heard.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, yes. So just to your point, that's exactly the issue when she tried to transfer it, because the properties were in different systems. The registry system is something you have to attend to in person. The electronic system is something that you could do just about instantaneously. So that's why they didn't that's why they didn't meld together. So without this, we're pretty much at a standstill. That's all. I think everything else has been explained. Thank you.
More so for my own information, I'm sure when the landowner Agnes back then in 1971 had a lawyer do all this, both parcels, the lawyers must have knew. I guess if she had it conveyed it to somebody else or just one of their names, would we be here today?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
My question is, if she say lot 23, part of lot 23, if she had it conveyed that to just one of either her son or her daughter-in-law in a different name, that lot 23 then would have a separate ownership and it's still the same PIN number. And same with the other two 100-acre parcels. Just because they did it back then, as we're well aware, the Ontario government, if there was a landowner adjoining two properties, they consolidated them and give one thing. I just, for my own clarification, Madam Chair.
If she conveyed one of the three to, say, her son, it would be an improper conveyance in breach of the Planning Act, because she still would then have retained adjoining land. The same reason we're here today. It would be a breach. Any conveyance of any one of those three pieces by itself would be a breach of the Planning Act, because she retains, or would have retained at that time, adjoining property. So she couldn't do that legally and properly. Impossible.
So basically, under the Planning Act, and when lot boundaries touch and you have identical ownership, the lots will merge. So although the transfers, those transactions themselves, the registrations were done properly, however, because they were in two different systems, the two valid transfers didn't remain valid because of the fact that they were in separate systems, but her ownership was under all three. So regardless that she had conveyed some of the properties, because she still had that other ownership in a different registry system, it just never worked. So essentially, the pins are all separate and they just need to be consolidated. The validation of title is a tool in the Planning Act that can be used to deal with historical Planning Act issues that don't make sense. Like the Planning Act was established in 1990 and there's a lot of changes, but historically there's a lot of strange things that happen with ownership within the registry and the two different systems that complicate property use today. I don't know if that helps to clarify more.
Just one further, Madam Chair. Because this is validation, there was no public notice. Are any of our decision, is this decision on the validation appealable to, if anybody's not happy with it?
I believe so, because it's, let me just pull up right now. But yes, Committee of Adjustment, the decisions of the Committee of Adjustment are appealable. So technically they could appeal the committee's decision. And really, like when it comes to validation of title, what the committee is looking at is this creating an adverse impact on the surrounding communities, a negative impact on the surrounding lands, where this approval or validation of what, you know, historically has happened to correct it? Is this going to cause major adverse impacts or really affect the lands in any way? Those are kind of things that you want to consider when making your decision on this application. Ultimately, the parcel configuration itself is remaining as it shows when you search the property with the municipal address. The only thing that the application will result in, if upon approval, would be that the pins are consolidated to one and that makes sense within the registry system. So that is the request.
Carissa, sorry, if I may.
Yes.
The decision is not appealable to the Ontario Land Tribunal. This is just a clerical thing. So it is an error in land titles that needs to be rectified through the validation of title. So it's just an administrative process that needs to be done so that these properties can all get merged into one PIN. So it's not appealable, and there's no new lots being created.
Thank you. I guess my concern is, I'm not sure whether is it obviously not a landowner right now, it's in the estate. As we see in here where it had to go to a court to appoint the estate trustee. I'm just asking, that's why if there's appeal, if some of the members of that are heirs to the estate have any concerns or anything, there has been no public notice. I'm not sure if all of them have been notified or if there is any.
Because, oh, Jen, would you like to speak on that or?
Yeah,
Okay,
through the chair
perfect.
to Member McMillan. This is done under a different section of the Planning Act. It's done under Section 57. So it's not the same lot creation, ownership permission, those types of things. Validation certificates are generally done not by the owner because in almost all cases, the owner is deceased because it was something that happened years and years ago. So there's no requirement for notice. There's no requirement for owner's authorization. It's very much just a clerical cleaning up of the title. And it doesn't really change anything other than being able to like legally put the properties the way they should be.
And just to add further, Ramara, the designated consent approval authority is the Committee of Adjustment. You know, a staff member could have authority to approve consents where there's no where they're circulated and there's no concerns and they meet everything. As long as there was no comments received, those could just be approved. So in some places with these applications, they don't go to committee, but because the committee does have delegated authority for all of the decisions for relating to Section 53, 57, 45, etc. That is why it's being brought to a public meeting, but technically you wouldn't need a public meeting depending on the delegated authority.
Just one further question, Madam Chair. I'm not sure which lot the Rogers Tower is on. Is that on lot 23 or 22? There's a telecommunications tower on one of the lots.
The Rogers lease is on lot 22, concession L. The bottom right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further comments?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, Member Warren?
Yes, I had an opportunity to see the applicant, to read the application and view the property. I think this is maybe the second, maybe even the third time since I've been on the committee that we've had a validation of title. Although it may appear to be strange coming to the Committee of Adjustment, I know that we have the authority to act on these matters. So I am absolutely with no problem with it. It's just, as we've been told, a clerical error that took place years ago, and it has to be corrected before any further use of the land or development or sale of the land has to take place. So I'm good with it.
Okay. I'm in agreement. I have no concerns or issues as well. So if there's no further comments, I will put forth the recommended motion as presented on the staff report that the application be approved. Moved by Member Truax, second by Member Walker, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you so much.
I thank the committee.
Okay, moving on to item 4.2, consent files B 125 and B 225. Carissa, or Secretary Treasurer, take it away.
Thank you. Excuse me for a moment. I'm just going to shut the door. It's a little bit loud just to carry on with the meeting. One moment. Thanks for your patience. So we're discussing consent files B125 and B225 for proposed boundary adjustment and an access easement. And they're for the properties 4432, 4442, and 4438 Plum Point Road. These applications have been submitted by Morgan Planning and Development applicant on behalf of landowners Mario and Maria de Orazo, requesting a boundary adjustment to the subject lands to convey approximately 117 square meters to the neighboring property 4442 Plum Point Road. And this is conveyed from the merged properties that are known as 4438 Plum Point Road, merged with property 4432 Plum Point Road. And further, the applicant has submitted a second consent application to request approximately a 61.4 square meter easement established across 4442 Plum Point Road as to provide legal access to the merged properties. The owners of the lots are also currently working with Clerk's Department to purchase the unopened road allowance abutting the property 4442 Plum Point Road in order to obtain the boundary adjustment to realign the lot fabric along again with that consent application for access of easement. So essentially it's just cleaning up the property and the property boundaries and providing for legal access. Now, staff have reviewed the subject applications and the supporting materials against applicable provincial, upper local planning policies. And it is staff's opinion that the application has satisfied the requirements of all policies and is consistent or doesn't conflict with policy as per the staff report. And we do note that the applicant has prepared a PowerPoint presentation that's been posted on the agenda. So we thought we would allow the applicant to provide a further overview of the policy, and staff just remained valid on the staff report recommendations, which are that should the committee find it appropriate to approve this subject consent applications, the following conditions are recommended. One would be satisfying the requirements of the Township of Ramara, financial and otherwise, including the payment of outstanding taxes. And provisions of a registered legal description on the parcels to be severed together and that demonstrate the proposed access easement with an electronic copy of the applicable reference plan. And the third condition is a draft transfer prepared by a solicitor for the lands to be severed and merged with 4442 Plum Point Road. And so condition one is just to make sure that the taxes are paid up to date so that there's no approvals in the event the taxation is not provided, and that the registered legal description for the lands to be conveyed. We need that for the certificate of official, as well as the reference plan to demonstrate what has occurred in this application. Condition 3 is required for the boundary adjustment to show formal record of the land parcel transfers between the applicable parties, ensuring accurate land title records, which is very important. The suggested motion is that the Committee of Adjustment receive report BP 1525 published the May 6, 2025 meeting agenda, and that consent applications B125 and B225 be approved with the recommended conditions. The alternatives are that the committee could amend the suggested motion or otherwise defer or deny the applications. And I think that's pretty much everything I have to say on the application. However, I believe the applicant is online, and I'm just going to, Josh, do you need me to share the screen for the PowerPoint?
Sure, yeah. Good morning, members of the committee, and thank you, Carissa, for the overview. Yeah, Carissa, I think if you could share the PowerPoint, but instead of going through the entire PowerPoint presentation, I think, picture's worth 1,000 words. So I'm wondering if you can flip to slide 9 of my PowerPoint presentation so that I can describe to the committee and to members of the public that are watching what the existing lot fabric is and then what the proposed lot fabric is. And I think that by describing those things with those visuals, everyone will fully understand what we're here to speak about today.
Perfect. You need slide 9.
I think
correct?
it'll be slide 9. I'll know it when I see it. So if you just pull that
No
up, then
problem. Just sharing my screen right now. Here we go.
there we go. Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Joshua Morgan. I'm a registered professional planner with the company Morgan Planning and Development. We're based in Aurelia. We have a variety of different projects throughout the Township of Ramara, active projects now, and many that we've done over the last 15 years. I'm here today representing the Durazio family. The Durazio family own what I would consider to be a very unique collection of lots here. So the parcel that you see in dark yellow, I'll call it, the address of that parcel is 4442 Plum Point Road. And then the parcels that are in a lighter yellow color are 4438 Plum Point Road. The yellow color, actually, as Carissa alluded to, it used to be two separately conveyable parcels, but those parcels merged on title. So you end up here with two separately conveyable parcels, one of which has quite a unique shape. And what sort of protrudes into the parcel is an unopened road allowance, which is owned by the Township of Ramara. So we have two requests for the committee's consideration today. One of them is for a boundary adjustment, and then the other one is for an access easement. So Carissa, if I could ask you to just flip to the next slide, please.
Here we go.
Yeah, that's perfect. So committee, what you'll see here is highlighted in gray. That's the unopened road allowance owned by the municipality. And before we submitted these consent applications, we submitted a request through the clerk's department at the township, requesting that the municipality deem this unopened road allowance as surplus. And as I'm sure you'll know, committee members, deeming a piece of municipally owned land surplus is the first necessary step before a municipally owned parcel of land can then be sold to a member of the public. So we have consulted extensively with the township staff on this property, and they said to us, look, guys, first request that the unopened road allowance be deemed surplus. And if council deems it surplus, then it would be appropriate to move forward with these consent applications. So we did that. Council has deemed this unopened road allowance surplus. So we kind of have that resolution waiting in the wings for us, which then opened the door for today's committee hearing. So you'll see I have two irregular shaped parcels of land that have this hatching on them in the light yellow lot. So in the parcel known as 4438, the light yellow, you'll see a parcel adjacent to the lake, which has some diagonal lines on it. That parcel is proposed to be conveyed from the light yellow to the dark yellow. And then on the other side of the right of way or the unopened road allowance, there's a small triangular parcel that also has the diagonal lines on it. That is the second of two parcels that we're proposing to convey from 4438 to 4442. And if we flip to the next slide, it's all going to start making a whole bunch of sense to everybody. So ultimately, once these consent applications for the boundary adjustment are approved today, I hope, and then once the unopened road allowance is transferred from the municipality, remember it's already been deemed surplus, so we've laid the groundwork. Once the unopened road allowance is then transferred from the municipality to my clients, this is what the lot fabric will look like. So today we have this very irregular shaped collection of parcels of land with the road allowance going through the middle, making it very unusual, non-compliant with the zoning bylaw. And what you see on the screen right now will be the outcome of what we are asking for, which in my opinion as a land use planner is a much more desirable lot fabric. We are not creating a new lot. We are not increasing the development potential of either parcels. Both of these parcels already have dwellings on them. So we're not seeking to create a lot and therefore build a house that isn't there right now. There are already 2 houses, one on each parcel of land. We're just creating 2 much more typical and usable parcels of land. So what you see here will be the outcome of the boundary adjustments that we're seeking today. That was the first application, the boundary adjustment application. The second application, which we're here to discuss today, is the establishment of an access easement over the dark yellow 4442 in favor of the light yellow 4438. So you'll see there's a cross hatching in the middle of your screen, which we've labeled as proposed access easement. So at this meeting, through this application, we're seeking the committee's approval to establish an access easement over the dark yellow in favor of the light yellow. And all that will do is it will allow the light yellow, the house on the light yellow, to continue to use the same driveway that it uses today. So really, nothing on the ground that you see there today will look any different as a result of the approval of these applications. We will simply be creating a much more typical lot fabric together with appropriate access easements over the dark yellow in favor of the light yellow. I think I can probably leave it at that for now. And if members of the committee or staff or members of the public have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody from the public in attendance? Would you like to come and speak, ask questions? Yes, and please introduce yourself. And I believe this gentleman needs to give his address as well, Carissa. Name and address?
Yes, please.
Name and address, please.
My name is Ian Brown, Madam Chair. I own 4428 Plum Point Road, which is the property at the bottom of your page or the bottom of the slides immediately adjacent to the what was 4432 Plum Point Road.
Okay.
I am fully in support of the application as far as it goes. So let me make that clear. I'm not here to object. I'm here to support the change in the lot fabric, which makes all sorts of sense. What I'm concerned about, or what my question is, whether it's to Josh or to staff, is in the Morgan Planning report, Planning Justification report, at the end, it was assumed that there would be a condition imposed on these 2 consents regarding the maintenance of a drainage easement across the property, because there is a what I think is described as a ditch and a culvert that connects the wetland on the east side of Plum Point Road to Lake Simcoe. And I am questioning, I guess, I'm inquiring why that recommendation from Morgan Planning was not included in the conditions recommended by staff.
Yep. Carissa?
I could speak to that. So when we receive these applications, we circulate to the applicable departments and agencies. The access easements for municipal, like drainage maintenance and things like that, are established usually with infrastructure department. In this case, the applicant had already been working with the clerk's department and infrastructure to establish this, the drainage aspect. So that's why the planning staff have not included that as a condition, as it is already being completed. However, if the committee felt it appropriate to include as a condition, I don't see that being an issue in terms of that is, part of the intent of the applicant anyhow. And I don't see an issue with it from a planning perspective to include that as a condition.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Because this is the only public part of the process, because obviously the negotiations around the transfer of title for the unopened road allowance are not public. They are private and appropriately confidential. So I would request if the committee saw fit to include the condition that's mentioned at the end of the Morgan Planning report as a condition so that it is on the public record. And then there is no negotiation when it comes to the private transaction on the sale of the land. It becomes a condition of the whole transaction.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
thank you.
What I can do is just pull up and
Yeah, I'm
amend so
trying
that
to read it.
everyone's in agreement with the motion being passed, but just give me a minute or two. I will get that done.
And I'll just say it's Josh here for Ian. Thanks for your comments and for the committee and other members of the public that are listening. We have a reference plan already completed, which does include parts that will essentially describe that access easement, which will continue to allow for the flows of water from the wetland into the lake. And the purpose of that the purpose of that easement, which we have discussed with staff over the last number of months, is to allow for the municipality, if and as required, to make sure that that drainage course is, is cleaned out and continuing to do its job. So the surveying work for that's already been done, so adding a condition, is quite honestly what we had expected.
Madam Chair, I guess a follow-up question to Josh. I'm assuming that the discussions that have taken place with the infrastructure department are limited to an easement across the unopened road allowance. Is that a fair assumption, or does it also cover the other two parcels on the current 4432 Plum Point Road? Because it just seems to me that this is an opportunity, if those two, the piece closest to Plum Point Road and the piece closest to the lake, which are not on the unopened road allowance, this would seem to me, if those are not properly registered on title as permanent easements for the municipality, this would be a good opportunity, probably the only opportunity to make sure that happens.
Yeah, Ian, you're right, or your concerns, I suppose, have been addressed in that our reference plan does include parts that will describe an easement which will extend from Plum Point Road all the way to the lake. So that means, Ian, not just across the unopened road allowance, but also across 4432 Plum Point Road.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
For the benefit of the committee and for Mr. Brown, you should be able to see my screen. I've shared the draft reference plan up on the screen, and it does show the part 1, part 2, and part 3, and then possibly also part of part 4.
Yes.
That shows the drainage easement that we've discussed with Morgan Planning.
Yeah, that's right, Jennifer. It's parts 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
The chair to Assistant Secretary Treasurer, can you please just confirm the reference plan number? I'm going to include that in the suggested condition.
There won't be a number because it's not registered.
Oh, right. It's a draft. We don't have anything.
Yeah, so you can just say that, just for the condition, just say that there's a provision for drainage easement across the property.
Thank
You don't even
you.
have to put like part 1, 2, 3, 4. You can just say that that the applicant work with the municipality to enact a drainage easement across the property for the drainage ditch.
Thank you. Just typing right now. Okay, I think I should share my screen and just confirm that the committee is comfortable with the suggested motion as amended now. So the recommended conditions were the taxes up to date, reference plan, draft transfer, and that the applicant work with the municipality to establish an easement across the property in favor of the township. That is required for the drainage ditch and culvert that runs over the portion of the road allowance to be conveyed to the merged properties.
Chris, I don't know that you should have it say that runs over the portion of the road allowance that's to be conveyed. I would just say across the subject properties, and then that way it covers both the private and the municipal.
Mhm.
And it's just fairly clear.
Perfect. So that the applicant work with the municipality to establish an easement across the property in favor of the township that is required for the drainage ditch and culvert that runs across the subject properties. I guess I should put a maintenance easement because that's what it would be. Is
Okay.
everyone comfortable with the recommended conditions as amended?
So is the idea that the township will access the culvert through like part 1, 2, 3, 4, and that'll be enough space and they won't have to use the access easement then to access that ditch? Because part 16 doesn't extend to part 2. So essentially they'll be coming off Plum Point Road where the actual ditch inlet is to do the maintenance, and then they cross over from there. And then
That's
they
correct.
should. That's correct. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's really because there's an existing drainage ditch and culvert there. So the easement is wide enough that the township could get in there to do maintenance and repairs and improvements to that if needed without having to use the driveway. Just
Perfect. Okay. No
And the
objections.
width of the easement that we're speaking about, the parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, the width of those parts was the result of discussions with the municipality.
And it doesn't. And then obviously it doesn't extend to like the corner of the house at all. Cause I know it's like pretty narrow there.
That's correct. We have our plans, which I shared on the screen previously, or which Carissa had, illustrate the location of the dwelling and its relationship with the drainage easement, and it does not, the dwelling itself does not encroach upon parts 1 or 2 or 3 or 4.
Perfect. Any comments on the change condition? Okay, moving on to comments in general. Member Truax, would you like to start again?
No, if all the conditions are met and whatever, and I think Mr. Brown's questions were all answered and everything, I have no problems.
Okay, Member Walker?
Yes, I did a site visit and all the signs were up and I read the reports. I have no problems.
Member McMillan?
I did a site visit, yeah, and everything is fine. Yeah, my concern was the ditch there too, about maintenance on it, and now that we satisfied Mr. Brown's thing, I support it.
Perfect. And Member Warren?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Morgan, I just have one question. The land, the township road allowance was deemed surplus. The property owner is in negotiations to purchase the property. Can we make this decision without that property actually being registered in the property owner's name? I'm a little fuzzy on that.
That's a good question, Member Warren. I have, well, actually, I'd like to speak with Jennifer and Carissa after the meeting, if not today, then tomorrow, just to talk about like the specific process that comes next. And in other words, what are the next steps? Because you're right, essentially, like, well, once this decision is made today, we'll have 2 years in order to satisfy the conditions of this approval. So within that 2 years, Member Warren, and I see Jennifer's popping on and she may just correct me, but I'll tell you what I think will happen. So we're going to have hopefully approval today, which will be a provisional approval for 2 years. We have 2 years to clear those conditions. Within those 2 years, it won't take that long. Then we'll take the next steps to actually acquire ownership of that unopened road allowance, which was deemed surplus. And so really it will be the timing of the lawyers in terms of when my client takes ownership of the parts that they're purchasing from the municipality and when the parts that are subject to this boundary adjustment flip from 4438 to 4442. So it's all going to ultimately happen at the same time, but it's just a mechanism of the lawyers behind the scenes when they're moving the parts around in terms of ownership.
That's correct. And so that's the road allowance will be transferred to the owner sort of at the same time in one clean swoop. It just stops transferring the land to the owner and then the owner transferring the land separate again with the certificate. So the way it's going to be set up is that the easements and the transfer and the severances will all be done at the same time. And that's why the reference plan has every part identified so that we can issue a specific certificate of official for the lot, including all of the parts.
Thank you. Next, one other question, and I have no problem with this application. I understand that both properties are owned by the same family. Am I correct on that?
Same family, but not under the same structure. So I believe, I don't have the deeds in front of me, Member Warren, but I believe that one is owned by Mario and one is owned by Mr. Azio.
Okay, that's fine. I just was curious about that. No, as far as this, it makes sense. It cleans up a helter-skelter bunch of pieces of property and makes two nice, clean lots. So I'm quite in approval with the application. Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had the same concerns about the surplus, if we should make it a condition, but after hearing the explanation, it sounds like putting that as a condition will affect the flow of conveyances and that everything happening at once would make more sense. And then, of course, I had the question of why doesn't the second lot have their own entrance? And of course, with the septic bed being there and the ditch, there isn't room to do that. So this just makes the most sense. So yeah, I have no concerns as well. So I will put forth the recommended motion as presented and amended now, that the application be approved with the recommended conditions. Moved by Member Warren, second by Member McMillan. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you. So skipping over item 4.3, as it was just the County of Simcoe response to the previous application. Item 4.4, minor variance file A225 for 3560 Dock Road. Secretary Treasurer.
Okay, we have the subject property, 3560 Dock Road here. And this minor variance application has been submitted by Brianna Allen with Sustainably Drafted Design, Inc., applicant on behalf of Allen and Heather Ritchie, owners, to request relief from the exterior side yard provision and from yard projections to the minimum average high water mark setback. The variances are requested to allow for the demolition of the existing legal nonconforming dwelling and the construction of a new dwelling with a proposed attached garage and attached porches. And the proposal requires the following variances. So it's proposing a 2.6 meter setback from the exterior side yard to the entrance porch and a 4.5 meter setback from the exterior side yard setback to the proposed dwelling, a 6 meter setback from the exterior side yard to the proposed attached garage, where the zoning bylaw requires a 7.5 meter setback for all of those items. And last would be, if I can zoom properly, the maximum yard projections to the average high water mark setback, and they are requesting a 11.96 meter setback, whereas the zoning bylaw would require 13.5 meters. And in terms of the subject property, the property is designated rural in the county's official plan, is designated shoreline residential within Ramara's official plan, and is zone rural according to Ramara's zoning bylaw. The staff report on the agenda does recommend approval of this application as it is reviewed as being in conformance or not in confliction with the provincial planning statement 2024 or the local official plans and zoning bylaws. And in terms of the 4 tests of a minor variance under Section 41 of the Planning Act, I will just do a review of these tests. Test 1 is, does the application maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Staff are of the opinion that the application does maintain the intent of the zoning bylaw, as Section 210D allows for replacing existing legal non-conforming buildings. And although that the existing dwelling is recognized in this provision, the dwelling itself is being increased, which is proposed to make better use of the residence. And the increase in dimensions is being moved further from the water than the existing footprint. So the development is not actually going closer, although it is wider on the lot. The Ramara Infrastructure Department confirmed that the requested encroachment to the south exterior side of the property isn't expected to cause any burden to the municipal snowplow operations to the public boat launch that abuts this property. I'll just pull back up that aerial image here, but right here, the adjacent property is municipal lot and boat launch. But again, infrastructure did not have concerns with that, with this proposal. In terms of test 2, does the application maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? Staff are of the opinion that the application does, as the proposed replacement of the existing dwelling and increase in gross floor area enhances the existing character of the subject property as well as the surrounding lands. And then the proposal does align with the local official plans, as they do allow for, those plans do allow for existing uses and limited residential uses. So within the Greenland designation specifically, the proposal aligns and doesn't conflict with that, those permitted uses. And the proposal does not create land compatibility issues with the surrounding lands. Again, it's existing lot of record just with a newly proposed enhanced development. For test 3, are the requested variances desirable for the appropriate development or use of the subject lands, buildings, or structure? Staff are the opinions that the requested variances are desirable for the subject lands. As the subject lands only have 14.9 meters of lot frontage, they do abut the water and require an exterior side yard. And in addition, are only 0.26 acres in total land area. So it's a more unique lot configuration for more restrictive setbacks compared to a typical lot, not on an exterior side yard or perhaps abutting water. And then again, the existing legal non-conforming dwelling was constructed a long time ago, 1923, according to our records, with minimal gross floor area. So in this case, as well, to accommodate the septic system to meet the building code, staff are of the opinion that due to all of these reasons that test 3 is satisfied and that the proposal is desirable for the subject property. For test 4, are the requested variances minor in nature? Staff of the opinion, yes, as it is a replacement of the existing dwelling, and the size of the lot as well as exterior side yard and high water setback do limit the total building envelope of the land. And further, the requested variances compared to the existing are not that drastic of an increase in numbers. And again, the development is being pulled back from the water. So that is in further alignment with the policies that we have at play. And yeah, the actual numbers themselves are minor requests in staff's opinion. The conclusion is that staff recommend that if the committee finds it appropriate to approve this minor variance, the following condition is recommended to be added to the approval, and that is that the variances pertain only to the request as submitted with the application. And again, that's just to ensure that the construction is substantially compliant and that it's, you know, not a drastically different project, or maybe there's suddenly a giant gazebo that wasn't approved in that setback. This just ensures that it's clean and clear for the building department. The suggested motion is that the Committee of Adjustment receives report BP 1425 published to today's meeting agenda, and that minor variance application A925 be approved with the recommended condition. And the alternatives are that the committee could, again, amend the suggested motion or defer or otherwise deny the application. And that is all I have on this application. Thank you.
Hi, good morning.
Through you, Madam Chair. I'm Brianna Allen of Sustainably Drafted. I am the applicant that has been hired by Al Ritchie and Heather Ritchie. So thank you, Carissa, for covering all the points. One thing that we wanted to point out is we did have a septic designer come to site and make sure that we can fit a septic. I know that's been a problem in the past of getting minor variances and then not being able to fit a septic system in. So we have gone through those steps and then pushed the house as far back from the water as possible with that design. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anybody from the public in attendance?
Would anyone online like to speak?
Perfect. Nope. Okay, opening it up to the committee. Member Truax, I will start with you again.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with the application. If anything, it's it's meeting all the septic approval things, but if anything, it's gonna make the particular area look a little nicer and better, and I have no problem.
Member Walker?
I did a site visit and sign was posted and I read all the reports. I have no concerns.
Thank you. Member McMillan?
And thank you, Madam Chair. I did a site visit and I'm satisfied. There's going to be quite a few trees to come down to where the septic system's going to go. And just a side comment on that, the tree, I think it's on Township property where the big sign was, that tree looks in pretty bad shape. And just one further question was the question on the frontage when we say 14.9 meters, because it's on a corner lot, do we not add isn't there a formula for that?
So because it's an existing lot of record, like I know the dwelling was in 1923, but I don't know when this lot was actually created. Normally this property would require, if you were going to create it today, at least 30 meters of lot frontage, but because it's an existing parcel of record, that 14.9 meter frontage, although it doesn't comply with the current zoning bylaw, it's legal non-conforming and it can remain as is. However, the width of the lot is not very wide compared to other properties. So it does, I think, make the the variance a bit more likely to be triggered due to that small lot size. So I think it's nice that, we're looking at making sure that they are appropriate width when they are created, but given it's existing.
Just my only concern was that because the address is Dock Road, not Beach Drive.
Oh, yes. So you're
on
wondering.
Dock Road, there's more than 14.9.
Yeah,
meters.
so that was, I think, looked at a bit, if I may speak on behalf of the applicant on that, but that was looked at a bit in terms of having the entrance off of Beach and not off Dock Road. But just due to the septic design and things like that, it ended up just making the most sense to keep it. But ultimately, infrastructure didn't have concerns and advised that the proposed variances wouldn't affect the ability to maintain the municipal lot adjacent.
You're welcome. And member Warren?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Yeah, I visited the site on Sunday evening. I talked with Ms. Ritchie for quite a while. She was good enough to show me the whole perimeter of the lot where the survey stakes or site plan stakes are located. It's your typical older lot where you had narrow frontages, and this one unfortunately has lots of depth to it. And I like the idea of moving the proposed dwelling back further from the water, although I never see any flooding problems with the elevation it has and the way that the levels of Lake Coochigan are all controlled. So in saying, summing it all up, I'll just say that I think this is a good move on the part of the owner to rebuild, because it does look like it's been there for some time and they want a year-round home out of it. And they seem to have the approval from a septic contractor that he can make a system work on the property that they have. So I'm all for it. So I'm in on it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. I'm in agreement. I think you've done the absolute best of redesigning a functional home on a complicated lot, and it's what you've worked with. And I agree that it's always better to keep it away from the water and move it closer to the road. So I will now put forth the recommended motion as presented on the staff report that the application be approved with the recommended condition. Moved by Member McMillan, second by Member Walker. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you so much. So moving away from the applications, item 5, adoption of minutes. Does anybody have any errors or omissions requiring a revision from the March 4th, 2025 minutes, draft minutes?
None.
Seeing none, I will move that they be approved then. Moved by Member Truax, second by Member McMillan. All in favor? Those are adopted. And then new or unfinished business, we do have an item from last meeting regarding the indemnification agreements for flood-prone properties.
Yes, and I thought we'd just put a memo, and I'll touch on it briefly, and then if anyone has questions, feel free to let me know. But essentially, because the PPS 2024 really does not want to see development within flood-prone lands that would cause any risk to human safety or property damage, the indemnification agreements themselves should, in staff's opinion, shouldn't be included in a planning approval decision, because a planning approval decision should align with the policy, and a flood hazard assessment should be undertaken to confirm that the development is not occurring within the flood prone lands in order to meet the PPS. So in that sense, if staff had a concern about the proposed development being within the flood prone lands, that condition would not protect at the end of the day, although, in terms of liability, sure, but ultimately it's still human safety and property damage that is what the province does not want to see with development applications. So we did circulate after the meeting to the building department just to confirm their process, as historically they have entered into indemnification agreements. And I know different times, maybe they were included in conditions, but ultimately they've advised, I'm going to read it, Division B, Part 9, Section 9118 of the Ontario Building Code requires the engineering for the floodplains, for foundations and floodplains. The design must fully comply with the hydrostatic pressure, and the elevations must be adjusted to suit. Now, this is information provided to me from the building department. That is not something I would necessarily comment further on, but the bottom line is that the building department has advised they don't enter into them because they are covered under that division in Part 9 of the building code. So they just have deemed that they're not really they don't really have a strong merit, given that they're not going to approve a development that isn't going to be protected. And when I say development, I really mean construction, because if a development application is triggered, unfortunately, it is difficult to really develop in floodplains. Like you don't want, it's not ideal, and we want to protect the lands where we can. So that's my update on that, to elaborate on the memo. Does anyone have questions for me?
Member Warren?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. My only question really was, okay, this, trying to think what the right terminology is. This, before the building department gives a, before if an application come in with a questionable elevation for a floodplain, is there actually a study done by an outside authority, or is it just the township's infrastructure department that will say this isn't a good application, it should definitely be denied?
So the building code, I'm not going to speak too heavily on the building code because it's not my code to really
I know,
speak on, but
understand.
the building code does allow for construction in floodplains. So although the land use planning policies are restrictive on that, if that's got past that point and this construction is approved by whatever law, and it's at the point where it's a complete building application, then building will want a topographic plan that shows the elevations. There's a bit of, I think, it can't be more than 30 centimeters. I will have to confirm, but basically there's certain, the flood elevation mark will be different for Lake Simcoe versus Lake St. John, Black River, etc. So they'll look at the flood elevation for the applicable water, and then they would need to provide an elevation plan that indicates they are at least the 30 centimeters above the high water mark to the finished floors and HVAC electrical. So I don't know if that helps to satisfies your question, or?
Well, I'm just looking at this case, this is hypothetical. Suppose we have an application where they're supposedly in a floodplain zone and it's recommended that the committee deny it. Well, then of course it's again appealable by the property owner to go ahead with it. But in most cases, I think the committee's just going to look at, you're going to go and have a site visit, and you're going to read the material that the township has presented as to why they shouldn't be there. I think we'd be satisfied with that in the end. It could come to a head sometime if a property is denied and they appeal it, that saying, well, we're going to build there, we want to build there anyways.
And I think that when it comes to like existing lots of record with existing dwellings, the zoning bylaw doesn't restrict from rebuilding in the exact, same footprint and dimensions, but it does require that any increase in height or, expansion in the footprint does meet the new setback. So the biggest thing is, even if somebody did have, a property that had a legal non-conforming dwelling and they did need to replace it, they would be restricted to meeting the zoning bylaw. However, whatever footprint they have, they are able and permitted to work within. So the floodplain definitely is restrictive, but at the same token, people can still use their properties. It's just more when it comes to new development as well as development that is altering and expanding. The PPS is very, very much against any, especially living space, any habitable space. And so that's just something that staff ensure we recommend in our reports, is that we don't really have any living space within floodplains being recommended to be approved. And if that was appealed, I would think that because you're making a decision in alignment with provincial policy, that should be protection for the committee. But yeah, thank you.
Any further comments? Okie dokie. I will move forward for adjournment then. So recommendation that the Committee of Adjustment meeting adjourn at 10:49 a.m. Moved by Member McMillan, second. Oh. Go ahead.
Do you just mean 4.3 for the indemnification as information?
Okay,
Yeah, you're welcome to or do a motion on that, but it's not going to, because it's not an application, it wouldn't be like a recorded, yeah.
yeah, that's a good point. Do I need to do that for the agreement? Do I have to move that we receive it as information?
You know what? It's on the agenda. We might as well, if the committee is of the opinion that they are receiving enough information, definitely can pass that motion if.
Okie dokie. So moving back to item 6.1, recommendation that the committee receives the identification memo published on the May 6, 2025 meeting agenda as information. Moved by member McMillan, second by member Warren. All in favor? That's carried. And now adjournment. Recommendation that the Committee of Adjustment meeting adjourn at 10:50 a.m. Moved by member Walker, second by member Truax. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you so much.